Hi YouTube, I'm Mr. 8449. I'm doing a little update video on my bearded dragon. If you check my other videos, you'll see I did one before of introducing my dragon called Roxy. She's hiding under the log at the moment. And I did a little bit of an update care video. Since then, I've done a bit of research towards substrates mainly. Because I wanted to create an environment which was a bit more natural to her. Because I used to have this I'm not quite sure what it is. I think it's just tree bark basically. That's all it was. I had that all over the bottom, which wasn't very natural for her. That was more for rainforest sort of Terrarium or vivarium. So it's what I did. A little bit of research I found. I've got a bag of it up here actually. I discovered this stuff. I knew there was you could buy reptile sand, but the reason I didn't have that before is because I read that this here can get that the sand can basically inside their guts it can clump together. And when that happens, the animal is unable to get rid of those clumps, and it can become very ill and die. But this stuff here is designed to stop that. Calcium sand. I'm not quite sure how it does that, but I think the basic reason is that this here is made from limestone. Limestone is very high in calcium, which a bearded dragon uses in its diet. So instead of it clumping up together, its body will actually break it down to be used. Now this stuff here I picked up in my local reptile shop. It cost me £2.20 per kilo. I'm not quite sure what that is in US dollar. That would be about $3. Be around $3 US. That may be completely wrong. Anyway, around that sort of price. I thought it was quite cheap. In this here, which is a 4 foot by 1.5 foot by 1.5 foot vivarium, I discovered that I needed 7.5 kilograms of this stuff to give it a even layer all over to a depth of about 2 centimeters. The recommended depth, 2 to 2.5 centimeters. The reason that's the recommended depth is any deeper in your heat mat, which is underneath this rock here. Underneath the so it goes from about here all the way under the rock, and it stops up next to this tree here. I've got a heat mat under there, and if you put your hand on it, you can feel the heat from the heat mat coming through. If your substrate was any thicker than that, the heat would be unable to get through, and it may cause your heat mat to overheat, so you don't want it to be too thick. Obviously the bearded dragon comes from Australia, I believe. It comes from the Australian sort of outback and deserts, so there's quite a lot of sand around, which is what this here is meant to it's meant to look like sand. Obviously it's the wrong colour, but that doesn't really matter. I also found out that they like sort of bits of wood and rocks to climb on. Now what I used to have was just 1 or 2 rocks placed like this, but now I've designed it so if she wants, she can climb up here to bask, and then move all the way along and over these rocks here. So she's got a long way to climb. It's not very high, but it is quite long. If I wanted to add more height, I'd probably add another log or a plant or something here that she can climb, and they'll add a bit more height. A few other things I found. It's very good to get a rock for her to bask on, but don't buy a heated rock. Now, a heated rock is a very bad idea, because the rock can get too hot, and when they lie on it they can actually scald or damage their underside, which can leave permanent marks. It probably won't kill them, but it will burn them. Some people have burnt them quite badly on these rocks, and they haven't really realised until a little while after. So it's what some people use is pieces of slate. In my case I've got these here rocks that I dug up out of the garden and placed in here. Before anyone asked, I cleaned them in bleach, removed all the bleach. I then cooked them, and then I let them to stand in the oven for about a day or so. So these here, when they came in, they were perfectly clean, and there was nothing left on them. But these rocks here, they don't get too warm, but they do soak up enough heat for her to bask in nicely. The temperature about where my hand is it'd be about 105 Fahrenheit. That sort of temperature range. And then at the cool end, your temperature should drop down to about 80 Fahrenheit. And sort of down in the hot end about 90. So 90 in the hot end, about 75, 80 in the cool end, and about 105 Fahrenheit at the basking spot. For the people who use Celsius, I've got a little conversion thing here. At the cold end it should be about 25 degrees Celsius. At the warm end around 30, 32, and in your basking spot it should be 33, 34, 35, that's degrees Celsius. Now if the temperature isn't correct, you find that your bearded dragon is very lazy. You find they don't move around much, especially if your hot end is too cold. It will cause them just to sit in the hot end and not move at all, and you'll find you end up having to hand feed them and move them out of there, or else they just sit there and they just aren't very interesting. So you want your hot end to be about that sort of temperature, and that will cause the dragon to get a bit too hot. Move down to the cold end. When they get too cold, they'll come back to the hot end. If they do get really cold in the mornings and stuff, they can sit down and bask. It's very important that you do get your temperatures right. I've got one thermometer at the hot end. I have got a manual thermometer that I can move between my other reptile, which can go down the cold end and check the temperature. And I know the basking spot is about correct here. I am going to check that again before to see if I need to add any more rocks or anything, because I only changed this today. So yeah, that's how I made it a bit realistic. And the last thing is these plants in the corner. Very good, except from she can't climb on them. You can buy these plastic plants that look a bit like, they look like desert plants, like cactus and things like that. If you put those in the corner, it means that when she climbs, she won't always be climbing on rocks, on pieces of wood. She'll also be climbing on basically plastic plants, so it's a bit more different things to climb on. Now then, there's not more out to say. I'm just going to add a few more little care tips. Now, water. It's a good idea to keep some water in the in your vivarium, just in case she gets too hot. I have seen them walk down and sit in water, but you've got to make sure it's not too deep. I think maybe 2 centimeters to 1 inch is about as deep as you should really go for a adult dragon, fully grown. The reason being, if it's too deep, they can drown because they just don't raise their head high enough. If you've got anything under 12 months, I'd only put in about 1.5 centimeters to 2 centimeters. For the same reason, if it's too deep, they won't be able to keep their head out and possibly drown. You also need to give them food, fresh vegetable every day. As it's coming to the end of the day, it's now 10:30 at night. I've just cleaned out her old food, and the first job tomorrow is to go down and get some more in. I use this stuff here. Well, this is calcium and multivit supplements. I sprinkle this either onto her salad, or else I get a bag and I get some of her food, some of her live food in. Put the calcium and the live food in, just shake the bag up so the live food is covering the calcium, and then feed it to her. That way she gets enough calcium. She obviously, when she eats stuff off the ground, she gets a bit of this substrate here, which is calcium. That's another way of her getting a bit of calcium in, but I prefer her not to eat too much of this, as I'm still a little bit worried about. The substrate clumping in the stomach. I've been told from somebody who has this that he's never had a problem, so that's feeling it's a bit better for me. Yeah, with calcium you also need a UVA UVB bulb. This is mine. It's 3 foot long. I find that the 4 foot version is just slightly too big for my vivarium. You need to replace this every 6 to 7 months. Reason being that the UVA UVB rays start to die down. Now, what I have seen some people do is they stick just a little sticker on here, about here somewhere, and they write the date on it when they replaced it last, so they know when 6 months is up. It's quite important that you change that every 6 or so months. Without it, they can get vitamin and they can get calcium deficiency, and they can become quite ill. If you're planning on getting a bearded dragon, I would look around your local vets and find out which one will deal with reptiles, bearded dragons. So you know, if you have got a problem, you know the closest and best vet to go to. So yeah, I feed my. I've actually run out of crickets at the moment. I feed her for a treat. Some little locusts. Don't think there's any in there. There's one. That's for a treat. Also for a treat, she has Mario worms, or giant mealworms. Some just slipping away. I do also feed her silent brown crickets. The reason for them, the silent ones instead of the black ones, is this is in my bedroom, so I don't want crickets chirping all night. That's what I feed my dragon. Obviously, fresh salad every day. One bit of advice I'll see if someone can give me. When you feed your dragon salad, is it best to just leave a whole leaf in instead of chopping up the salad, lettuce leaf? Is it best to leave the whole leaf in, or in big chunks, instead of chopping up finely? Because what she's actually done is she's eaten one of these. She's cut it off there. She hasn't eaten it actually. The plant is just left on the floor. I'm going to remove that actually. But I was wondering if this was because it looked edible to her, and it looked more inviting than diced up lettuce. So if anyone can help me with that, be very appreciated. One thing, it's suggested that you don't feed your dragon iceberg lettuce. The reason for that being is that iceberg lettuce has very little nutrition in it. Although it tastes nice to us, it has very little nutrition in it, and it's not the healthiest of salad. So yeah, it's what I'm planning on doing actually, is getting 2 more friends. I'm looking for another fully grown female bearded dragon and 1 male dragon. I'm planning on breeding from at least one of them. So if that does happen, I will be doing a video on how to breed dragons. I've been doing a little bit of research, and the one thing you've got to watch out for is the cost. I reckoned it would cost me, for 1 clutch of eggs, it will cost me £50 or around about $75–80 to feed them for 2 weeks. Because young bearded dragons just eat. That's about all they do, is just eat. And you'll find that you'll be spending a lot on feeding them. If you do happen to find there's a clutch of eggs in your vivarium somewhere, and you weren't expecting it, and if you don't want them, I was informed that the only real way to kill the eggs is to place them in a freezer. That's not something that I'd really want to do, and I'd only ever do it at an absolute last resort if there was no way I could look after them. Because I know, especially with 2 females, they can lay up to 25 eggs each. Maybe 20 of those will hatch. If you have 2 females breeding, then you've got 40, and 40 little ones will cost you about £50, $75–80 a week to feed, which is a lot. Especially as then when you sell the dragons, you've got to make sure you make some money, or you break even at least, which is going to be quite hard, unless obviously you want to keep them and make a lot bigger collection of reptiles. So yeah, this has just been a little video on how a bit basic caring, how I set up my my vivarium, a little bit about the lighting and stuff. And, can't quite see. She's turned away from us now. She was facing me a minute ago. This is my little dragon Roxy. I may do one more video later on, just a short 2–3 minute video, just so you can see her running around and eating. Yeah. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions or queries, then please leave them as a comment, and please subscribe to my channel. Thanks.